can a single mistake in air traffic control turn an ordinary flight into a chilling tragedy? The mid-air collision between a GOL passenger jet and a private legacy aircraft wasn't just an accident. It revealed a devastating gap in the safety net that so many travelers trust. This disaster, which left 154 lives lost, sent shockwaves through the aviation world, leaving countless people with chills and a lasting fear of flying. Through a close examination of the overlooked signals, missed commands, and critical misjudgments, this story sheds light on the fragile balance of trust in the skies, where every decision has life or death consequences. On September 29, 2006, GOL Flight 1907 took off from Manaus, Brazil, bound for Brasilia. Operated by a Boeing 737-800, it carried 154 passengers and crew members. The aircraft was one of GOL's newer models, equipped with advanced safety features, including the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, TCAS, which should have safeguarded it against potential mid-air threats. The flight was expected to be routine, with an experienced crew on board who had navigated this route countless times before. In another part of the airport, a private legacy jet was also preparing for departure. This smaller, sleek business jet, operated by a team of American pilots, was on a route that would overlap with that of the GOL flight. Though these flights would travel along similar paths, standard air traffic control procedures should have kept them at safe, separate altitudes, preventing any interaction. However, with communication barriers and a complex route crossing over Brazilian airspace, this journey would become anything but typical. Both the GOL jet and the legacy jet were flying in a region known for high levels of traffic, with routes that often crisscross over vast areas of the Amazon rainforest. In such environments, air traffic control has the critical role of tracking each aircraft's position and altitude to ensure safe distances. But as the day unfolded, minor oversights and communication gaps began to emerge, small issues that, if left unchecked, would accumulate with devastating consequences. In the air traffic control tower, staff were handling multiple flights, including Flight 1907 and the legacy jet. Due to communication challenges and the high workload, controllers failed to notice discrepancies in altitude and route alignment between the two planes. At one point, an instruction meant to separate the planes was delayed, setting off a chain of events that would soon spiral out of control. The scene was set for a tragic encounter. Each flight believed it was on a clear path, unaware that a deadly convergence was forming ahead. With both aircraft flying in a shared space, separated by only thousands of feet in altitude, the slightest miscalculation or lack of communication could turn this overlapping route into a disaster. And tragically, as both planes moved into the same stretch of airspace, that is exactly what happened. Air Traffic Control, ATC, plays a critical role in ensuring the safety of flights, especially in areas with intersecting routes and high traffic. Controllers monitor aircraft positions, communicate altitude and speed adjustments, and coordinate separation to avoid potential conflicts. In the case of GOL Flight 1907 and the legacy jet, these standard procedures were put to the test, and the cracks in the system began to reveal themselves almost immediately. As both planes crossed Brazilian airspace, they entered regions with patchy radar coverage. In areas with limited monitoring capabilities, controllers rely heavily on regular radio check-ins to track aircraft positions and altitude changes. But due to language barriers, communication gaps, and signal disruptions, these essential updates were inconsistent and incomplete. The first critical error occurred when the legacy jet was instructed to maintain a specific altitude, but the controller on duty did not verify that this information had been received and executed. As a result, the legacy jet continued flying at an altitude that would place it dangerously close to the path of Flight 1907. In high-pressure environments, even minor miscommunications can quickly escalate. The language barrier between the English-speaking legacy crew and Portuguese-speaking Brazilian controllers created confusion. The legacy pilots misunderstood the ATC instructions, believing they had received clearance for their altitude. At the same time, the GOL flight continued on its assigned route, unaware that the legacy jet was flying at a potentially fatal altitude in the same airspace. This chain of misunderstandings might have been preventable if there had been clear communication and careful verification by the ATC team. But the controllers, already handling multiple aircraft, were unable to follow up consistently. Furthermore, the overlap of radar blind spots and the complexity of the airspace added additional layers of risk. Without precise tracking or reliable altitude updates, ATC was operating in a state of limited situational awareness. As the two planes moved closer, ATC missed another opportunity to prevent the collision. An automated system was meant to alert the controllers of any potential conflicts, but it failed to detect the proximity between Flight 1907 and the Legacy jet in time. The absence of timely alerts, combined with delayed instructions and assumptions that the aircraft were at separate altitudes, set the scene for an impending disaster. Had any one of these early errors been corrected, through clearer instructions, a follow-up check on altitude, or a more robust tracking system, the tragic encounter might have been avoided. Yet, as both planes continued on their course, these early missteps were overlooked, forming the beginnings of a cascade of errors that neither ATC nor the flight crews could fully anticipate. With each oversight, the margin for error grew smaller, and the fate of both flights moved steadily toward a tragic conclusion. As the GOL Flight 1907 and the Legacy jet unknowingly moved toward each other, confusion intensified in the airspace. Both aircraft were flying in a region where precise communication and clear altitude separation were critical. In these moments, a system designed to prevent mid-air collisions known as the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, TCAS, should have served as the final safety net. However, due to a series of missteps and miscommunications, the TCAS was unable to provide the protection it was designed to deliver. TCAS functions by alerting pilots if another aircraft is detected within a potentially unsafe range, triggering automatic responses to either climb or descend to avoid a collision. However, in the case of the Legacy jet, the TCAS was inadvertently disabled due to an oversight. This left the aircraft without the critical technology that would have notified its crew of the impending danger posed by GOL Flight 1907. Meanwhile, on the GOL aircraft, TCAS was active, but without a response from the Legacy jet, the system's warnings were limited in effectiveness. The Legacy crew was unaware that they were flying without TCAS protection, while the GOL pilots had no reason to suspect that the other aircraft might not respond to a collision alert. With no warning signals, each crew continued their flight, assuming they were in safe airspace. This lack of an alert system between the two planes removed a critical layer of safety, creating a blind spot that would soon turn deadly. At the same time, communication between air traffic control and the aircraft remained inconsistent. Due to the radar blind spots in the region, controllers had limited visibility of the precise location and altitude of both aircraft. Without real-time updates, the controllers relied heavily on scheduled check-ins from the pilots to confirm their altitudes and paths. However, with language barriers and radio signal disruptions complicating these exchanges, key updates were missed or misunderstood. The controllers' assumptions about each plane's altitude went unchecked, creating a situation where both aircraft remained on a collision course without anyone realizing it. As both planes approached the same point in the sky, the lack of collision alert systems, combined with inconsistent communication, allowed the gap between them to close rapidly. In the cockpit of the GOL flight, the pilots continued with no indication of the Legacy jet's presence nearby. The Legacy crew, likewise, remained unaware of any danger, as no alert prompted them to change altitude or course. The absence of a TCAS alert and the oversight in altitude monitoring had created a near-perfect storm of miscommunication, technology failure, and procedural lapses. With neither crew receiving a timely warning, the final opportunity to prevent disaster had passed. As they entered the same stretch of airspace, separated by mere seconds and a dangerously close distance, the consequences of these overlooked alerts and miscommunications were about to unfold with devastating force. In the final minutes before the collision, both the GOL and Legacy pilots were operating under the belief that they were flying safely within their assigned airspace. For the GOL pilots, everything appeared routine. They were following their scheduled flight path, unaware of the proximity of another aircraft. For the Legacy pilots, the confusion caused by radio miscommunications and a deactivated TCAS system created a false sense of security, leaving them similarly oblivious to the looming danger. At this stage, Air Traffic Control, ATC, was the only entity capable of correcting the course of events. Yet overwhelmed by heavy traffic and constrained by radar blind spots in the area, the controllers missed another critical opportunity to intervene. Due to assumptions and communication gaps, ATC failed to realize that the legacy jet was flying at the same altitude as the GOL flight, rather than the intended separation. One of the most significant challenges facing the controllers was the lack of altitude verification for both aircraft. With limited radar data, the controller responsible for monitoring the airspace relied on scheduled pilot check-ins to confirm the plane's altitudes. However, these routine checks were missed, and neither the legacy crew nor the GOL crew received updated instructions. As a result, each aircraft continued on its course with no indication from ATC of the impending danger. In high-stakes situations like these, clear communication and vigilance are essential. Small delays or misinterpretations can easily lead to cascading errors. The legacy pilots, facing mounting pressure due to limited communication and uncertain instructions, trusted their initial altitude clearance. The GOL crew, meanwhile, assumed that any potential conflicts would be detected and communicated by ATC, as per standard procedure. The lack of proactive communication from ATC removed an essential safeguard, leaving the pilots unaware of the danger. With both planes now within seconds of each other, the absence of specific instructions or alerts to change altitude sealed their fate. The final moments ticked by with each crew still believing they were clear to proceed, unaware that tragedy was now unavoidable. In an instant, the calm of routine flight operations shattered. At 37,000 feet, GOL Flight 1907 and the legacy jet met in a fatal mid-air collision over the Amazon rainforest. The impact was swift and catastrophic. The left winglet of the legacy jet sliced through the fuselage of the GOL Boeing 737, critically damaging the passenger aircraft and leaving it unable to sustain controlled flight. Within moments, GOL Flight 1907 was in a spiral descent, its fate sealed. For those on board the GOL flight, the moment of collision was terrifying and disorienting. Passengers and crew, unaware of the legacy jet's presence, had little time to process the abrupt, violent jolt that tore through the cabin. In seconds, the Boeing began to fall, spiraling toward the dense jungle below. The pilots attempted to regain control, but the extent of the damage made recovery impossible. The loss of aerodynamic stability meant that the aircraft's descent was unavoidable, leaving the pilots and passengers with mere moments before impact. The legacy jet, while heavily damaged, managed to remain airborne. In the cockpit, the two American pilots were shaken, struggling to comprehend what had just occurred. The collision had caused significant structural damage, but against all odds, the legacy jet remained operable. They quickly assessed the situation, realizing the urgency of an emergency landing. Miraculously, they managed to maintain altitude, and after assessing their position, they diverted to a nearby airfield where they landed safely despite the damage to their aircraft. The aftermath of the collision was devastating. For the families and friends of those on GOL Flight 1907, the loss was incomprehensible. 154 lives were lost that day, making it one of the deadliest aviation tragedies in Brazilian history. The wreckage of the Boeing 737 was later discovered deep in the Amazon, a somber reminder of the tragic missteps that led to the accident. On the ground, news of the collision spread quickly, leaving a nation in shock and raising immediate questions about what went wrong. How could two modern aircraft, each equipped with advanced safety systems, collide in mid-air? The incident highlighted profound vulnerabilities within Brazil's air traffic control system, exposing lapses that many had previously overlooked. The collision was not only a devastating loss of life, but also a call for accountability and reform. This tragedy left a profound mark on the aviation community and on the families of those who perished. For air traffic controllers, pilots, and passengers alike, the collision underscored the terrifying reality of how a series of small errors and miscommunications could lead to disaster. As investigators arrived at the scene, a thorough and challenging process of piecing together the events that led to the collision began. The goal was not only to understand the sequence of errors, but also to prevent a similar tragedy from ever happening again. The investigation into the mid-air collision between GOL Flight 1907 and the Legacy jet was one of the most complex in Brazilian aviation history. Conducted by the Brazilian Aeronautical Accidents Investigation and Prevention Center, CNIPA, and assisted by international authorities, the inquiry sought to unravel how two modern aircraft could collide despite multiple layers of safety protocols. As investigators sifted through the evidence, the failures in air traffic control procedures, technological safeguards, and communication clarity became alarmingly clear. One of the most critical findings was the gap in Brazil's air traffic control infrastructure. Investigators found that the region where the accident occurred had significant radar blind spots, leaving controllers with limited visibility of aircraft positions. Due to these limitations, controllers depended heavily on routine check-ins from pilots to confirm altitude and flight paths. In this case, missed or delayed check-ins from both the GOL and Legacy flights went unnoticed, creating a deadly blind spot in altitude separation. Furthermore, assumptions by the controllers regarding the aircraft's positions remained unverified, allowing both planes to maintain the same altitude without intervention. The investigation also shed light on the disabling of the Legacy jet's TCAS system, which was either turned off or malfunctioned, preventing collision warnings that would have alerted the crew. This absence of TCS alarms removed a critical layer of protection, as it prevented the Legacy pilots from taking evasive action. Meanwhile, on the GOL aircraft, although TCS was functional, it could not operate effectively without a corresponding signal from the Legacy jet. In addition to technological and procedural shortcomings, the collision underscored deeper issues within Brazil's air traffic control system. The high volume of air traffic combined with outdated equipment and overworked controllers created a high-risk environment. In the months following the accident, the incident acted as a catalyst for discussions about working conditions for controllers and infrastructure improvements. 6 months later, these frustrations culminated in a mass protest that temporarily paralyzed operations at 49 airports across Brazil. This unprecedented move highlighted the urgency of systemic reforms and improvements to prevent future tragedies. The findings from this investigation were more than just technical details. They revealed a flawed system in need of critical reform. The accident of Flight 1907 not only exposed weaknesses, but served as a wake-up call, prompting both national and international aviation authorities to rethink and strengthen safety protocols in air traffic management. The tragic collision of GOL Flight 1907 and the Legacy jet triggered sweeping changes in Brazil's aviation system and sparked conversations across the global aviation community. The investigation's findings made it clear that improvements were necessary in both air traffic control protocols and safety technology. Brazilian authorities, along with international aviation organizations, took immediate steps to address these vulnerabilities, implementing reforms designed to prevent similar accidents in the future. One of the most significant changes was the modernization of Brazil's air traffic control infrastructure. Investment in updated radar systems and expanded coverage helped reduce blind spots, ensuring controllers had more accurate and continuous tracking of aircraft positions across the vast regions of Brazilian airspace. These upgrades enabled controllers to detect potential conflicts earlier and with greater precision, improving situational awareness and response times. In addition, protocols for altitude verification and position reporting were strengthened. Routine altitude confirmations became more stringent, and pilots were required to verify changes explicitly with controllers to prevent miscommunication. Communication standards were also revisited, with an emphasis on overcoming language barriers. Clearer guidelines for both pilots and controllers helped streamline communication, reducing the likelihood of misunderstandings between international crews and local ATC personnel. The accident also led to advancements in pilot training and cockpit resource management, CRM, particularly focusing on the importance of monitoring and verifying TCS functionality before each flight. This focus ensured that all pilots, whether flying commercial airlines or private jets, were equipped to recognize and address potential malfunctions in critical safety systems. Beyond technical upgrades, the legacy of Flight 1907's tragedy impacted the working conditions of air traffic controllers across Brazil. The collision highlighted the intense workload and high-stress environment faced by ATC staff, who often worked long shifts with limited resources. In response, new policies aimed at reducing controller fatigue and improving work conditions were introduced, leading to additional staffing and better resource allocation. The changes inspired by this accident reverberated beyond Brazil, influencing international standards and encouraging countries worldwide to evaluate and upgrade their own air traffic control systems. The legacy of GOL Flight 1907 and the lives lost in that tragic incident became a reminder that safety improvements are an ongoing process, requiring constant vigilance and adaptation to new challenges in aviation. By addressing the shortcomings exposed by this tragedy, the aviation industry took a significant step forward. These reforms, both in technology and human factors, not only honored the memory of those affected, but also helped create a safer airspace for future generations of passengers and flight crews. The tragic accident of GOL Flight 1907 serves as a powerful reminder that in aviation, every detail and every decision matters. This devastating event revealed critical gaps in air traffic safety, but it also led to profound changes that improved the security of our skies. For the families of those who perished, the reforms are a bittersweet legacy, a testament to the lives lost and a commitment to safer air travel. If this story resonated with you, consider sharing it to raise awareness about the vital role of safety and vigilance in aviation. Together we can honor those lost by ensuring their memory inspires lasting change.